Welcome to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
I'm Shannon Lawrence.
And I'm MB Partlow.
Quick content warning before we get started. This podcast may contain language and disturbing content, so enter at your own risk.
Oh, sure.
We're recording because I accidentally hit it. So, hello.
Hello. Howdy do.
We've actually both done some things.
We have.
Since last we spoke. How was your trip to Florida?
It was delightful. It was good to see. I got to meet a new family member. My nephew got married and really like his new wife. She was delightful. She had a great sense of humor. So,
good.
What have you been up to?
My outing was smaller. I didn't leave the state or even the city, but I went out. I went out to a local bar called Icons, which is for the gay community. And I was there and we went into the bathroom. So first, one of the people I was there with went into the bathroom and she comes out and she's like, okay, you have to go to the bathroom. Like, I'm really sad I didn't take my camera. And so I was like, well, I can always go to the bathroom, I'm sure. So I took my phone in there and sure enough, you walk in. So outside, rock music, your normal bar setting. Mm-hmm. And you go inside and you close the door. And you are instantly soothed by the sounds of Dolly Parton singing.
I love it.
And the lighting in there is like this nice dim lavender.
Ooh.
And there's just Dolly Parton things on all the walls. But that one wall is spectacular. It's just
yes.
Dolly Parton. And there's like silver 3D butterflies stuck to the ceiling. Like, it's the most relaxing bathroom I think I've ever been in. It was amazing. And then, like, out there, of course, there was an Elton John painting. There was a big painting of the Ruby Slippers. The things you would. I was surprised there was no Cher, no Barbara Streisand. So I forget who all else was there, but I was like, in terms of like gay icons, I would have expected some Cher at the very least.
What about Bette Midler?
Nope.
Huh.
Yeah. So very, very specific taste, I suppose.
Yeah.
But it was good. They had some good drinks.
I want to go there.
Although something I'm annoyed about is that anywhere you go downtown now, everybody has Lee's Gin because it's made here. Mm-hmm. It's a local. And so everybody, I hate gin. I hate gin. Mm-hmm. And so 3/4 of the drinks on all the menus downtown right now seem to have fucking gin in them.
For the record, I love gin, but I am very well aware it's an acquired taste and not a lot of people love it.
Ugh. So I did have a drink that was sand gin.
Good.
I forget what it was. So the menu, of course, is, geared toward it all. And they serve hot dogs. And you can get warm nuts. But also a charcuterie board.
Okay.
So, but we were like, where are the vag jokes? But while we were there, we realized it really seems to be more for the local males. Than the local females. So I was wondering if Club Q then is where the females would be going.
I don't know, but I know who to ask.
Yeah. So I was just curious because, my counterparts were like, yeah, this is for the gay men, not for us.
This is for a very specific subset of gay men.
Not that it wasn't welcoming. It was a delightful place. I have to say there were three bartenders there.
Oh.
So, yeah. So that, again, probably was an indicator of who the audience was intended to be. But they were super sweet and it was fun. I went there because when it first opened, it was that all of the bartenders had to also know how to sing.
Ray just posted a video today of a bar. I think he was there last night and the bartender was singing. Holy shit.
So maybe it's just Saturday night.
I wonder. Pipes.
Oh, she?
Yeah, okay. It was a woman.
And there was a guy there and somebody did say he has the voice of an angel or whatever, but he didn't sing that night. They brought in a band. And it was funny because, so the woman who was singing, it was a woman and a man, and so he was just playing a guitar. And we called him Angry Jesus. She was an absolute delight. She was adorable. She was this little teeny little blonde pixie. And she had a great voice, great songs. But he at one point, so I'm not going to name the band because we didn't like him, but we liked her. So at one point, Angry Jesus just starts babbling about something. Again, you're at a bar. If you're singing at a bar, people are going to be talking. There is, in fact, an entire Curb Your Enthusiasm about this episode that has Michael J. Fox in it. It's a great episode.
Ooh.
But because he gets mad because he's talking while there's a pianist in this lobby or something. So anyway, so the guy starts mumble, blah, blah, blah. We're there to listen to music, not to listen to you rant. Angry Jesus. And then so he just, I guess people are just going to talk over me while I'm talking. So I'm going to go ahead. And if you want to listen, I guess you'll listen. And like all this attitude pouring through the microphone from Angry Jesus, who's wearing sunglasses at 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. at night. And has like the stringy shoulder length blonde hair, like he thought he was Kurt Cobain. That's why we called him Angry Jesus. And then he proceeded. What he wanted to do was do some sort of spoken word poetry thing. You know, like like a beatnik.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's doing a beatnik
Slam
thing
poetry
while he's in his cowboy hat and his cowboy boots and his Angry Jesus glasses. And so after that, we were like, okay, fuck you then, because if you're gonna give us attitude. It's not a big place. So, yeah, it was a fun experience, but I'm not sure I'm necessarily going to go back. Although I did want to hear the bartenders sing because they sing show tunes and stuff, and that's what I was going for.
Well, I had a little adventure.
Yeah.
Recently. So, I recently got my minivan back. There was nothing wrong with my well, I mean, it's a 2006 minivan, so I can't say there's nothing wrong with it. But it runs, the heat works, the AC works, most of the windows work. So we lent it to someone who was in dire need of a vehicle. And this person did not ask us for the car. We just saw them in need and said, here, you can borrow it. So it came back with a quarter tank of gas, which pissed me off, and a crack in the windshield. But so anyway, 2006 minivan. As you can imagine, it costs a pretty penny to fill that bad boy up. Yes, you can imagine. You drive a Jeep.
I drive an 04.
So it's time to look for a new vehicle. And so yesterday, I kind of have a couple of vehicles in mind. So yesterday I looked at and I was like, well, one of them I have driven, one I have not. So I said to Joe, hey, what you doing this afternoon? And he gave me that look that husbands have been giving wives for millennia. And he goes, why? He knows me. I said, well, I was thinking we could run out to the dealership. I could drive a new one of these vehicles and see if I like it before I start looking for a used one. Because we always buy used vehicles. So he said, oh yeah, we could do that. So we get in the car and I even put pants on. I mean, I had sweats on. I wasn't running around the house naked. I could, but I wasn't. So I put on regular jeans and sneakers and off we go. So we get to the car dealership and the salesperson who was right inside the door when we walked up was a little goofy, but car salespeople are sometimes characters. So he asks us what he can do for us. Well, we're looking at these cars and he goes, well, let's sit down and talk about them. So we go over and we sit by the window so he can show us because there's the cars we want right outside the window. This is this model and this series and an SV or a Sport or whatever. So he says, so what are you looking for? And Joe says, well, my wife is the one. So he says, well, so tell me where are you and what are you looking for? So I start to tell him, I'm driving this 2006 minivan, and in the middle of me telling him, he cuts me off and turns to Joe and says, man, that is some hat. And I stopped and I was like, he goes, where did you get, that is a bomb ass hat. Where did you get that hat? That is an incredible hat. So Joe tells him Joe likes a newsboy cap. I know that's not what it's called, but it's that kind of flat cap. He happened because it was windy and chilly yesterday. So he's wearing the hat we got in Scotland. So he tells the guy, yeah, I got it in Scotland. And then Joe has to steer the conversation back to, can we talk about cars again? So the guy goes, which one would you like to try? And I said, well, the red one. And then he tells me it's not red. And I was like, I beg your pardon. He said, it's maroon. And I'm thinking to myself, so you've now cut me off and you've corrected me. Things are really going well so far. So we get in the car. But here's the thing. He says to me, It's not what he said to me. It's what he didn't say to me. He goes, well, let's go drive one. And he gets the keys and we go outside. He does not ask me if I have a license. He doesn't ask to see my license. He doesn't even ask me if I know how to drive. Nothing. Just, here you go. And puts me in the car and off we toodle.
All right.
And he's very excited about the fact that it has heated seats and a heated steering wheel. Don't get me wrong. These are nice features. It was sunny yesterday. It was windy, but sunny. So in Colorado, that means it's hotter than fuck in the car. So I said, when we got on the way home, I said to Joe, I don't know about you, but my ass was sweating by the time I got out of that car because the heat was on and the seat was warm, hot, and the steering. I said, it was just so fucking hot in there. And then the guy's going on about, there are 8 speakers. I was like, I'm old. I can't hear the difference. It's just like, and the guy had to have been my age or a little bit older. So I was just like, was it weird that he didn't ask if I even had a license? Just like, yeah, because there's a big sign saying you will be asked for your driver's license and proof of insurance. This guy just did not give a shit.
He just assumed. He was like, surely, if she's been driving a minivan around, she has a license.
And then when we said to him, okay, well, and it was a brand new car. So I said, well, I'm not sure I want something. I'm not sure I want to pay that much. I'm cheap. Hello. I said, well, do you have any used ones? I mean, what year is this? It's 2022, right? We have to go out and walk around the lot and look instead of pulling it up on the computer on his desk.
I bet that's just better sales tactic. If you're on the computer.
Well, if there weren't gale force winds, maybe.
Yeah, but I feel like looking at a car online is a different experience than looking at it in person, so I can see why somebody trying to sell something would want to show you in
yes,
person.
I can see why he would want to show it to us, and I did, but it was the fact that he was like, I don't know, let's go out and look. I'm like, you could have looked online and said, yes, we have this, this, and this. It was a very weird experience.
Yeah. So did you decide on a car? Because I think there's still a minivan parked in there.
Well, yes, that was my first dipping my toe into the market.
Okay.
And I was like, I could do a lot of research, but my daughter just did a lot of research when she bought her car. So I could just
use her research.
I'm like, what'd you like? What was good?
What has the best side impact?
Yeah. She's a thorough researcher.
There you go.
But yeah, I was just like, because I was telling this story to Frida last night. She's like, what the hell hat was he wearing? Was it on fire?
I think I've probably seen the hat, I feel like.
I'm sure if you've seen Joe between September and May, you've seen the hat.
So I watched Minx. Because you had mentioned that in a previous episode. I did watch it.
How much did you...
I finished it.
Oh, I haven't finished it.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, no, it's just... So, I liked it. And you're right. The guy from New Girl...
Yes.
I still don't know his name, but I do like him. I typically like him and stuff. He's a likable guy. He is the right balance of the kind of... He isn't the overly greasy. And yet... He's very believable and likable in the role, despite still having that edge of smarm and, and knowing that he has to do what he has to do, right? So it's not always going to be the greatest thing as far as everybody is concerned. So, yeah, it was good, but you were right about the array of peni. That was quite stunning.
It was 31 flavors.
Listening. To make sure there aren't children who are given their teens, but they still don't want to walk into the room when their mother has penises on the TV screen.
25 to 30 of them.
Right. And so, yeah, just one after the other, after the other, after the other, including a hard one at some point. Maybe you haven't gotten to that. Have you gotten to that point?
I'm like
It's a whole thing.
3 or 4 episodes in. I watched it until she slept with someone.
Okay. So no, you haven't gotten to the scene I'm talking about yet.
And then, wait. Oh, and then in the press conference. Is that might be the same episode or...
It might be. I don't know.
So that's as far as I got. But I went to Florida.
Well, so speaking of Florida, I've been watching, it's called Killing It on Peacock and it's got Craig Robinson. big guy, big comedian. He's in.
I think I know who
he's
he
in The
is.
Office and stuff. But
Yes.
yeah, so it's this. He needs money because he wants to start a business. And there's this whole, oh my gosh, uncomfortable scene at the beginning. He's a black man. He's trying to get a loan to start his business. And the guy is going back and forth between, I swear I'm not racist, but I can't give you a loan because of, it's something like the number of black people we've given the raise to who've defaulted or some crap like that, and he's like, so they won't let me, but I like you and I really believe in your vision and I'm not racist, but I can't give it to you because you're black. And I'm like, please shut up, please stop. And he keeps going. And so anyway, what it all leads to is he happened to kind of stumble due to a very strange, like Uber driver into a situation where he learns he could win a contest and get exactly the $20,000 he needs to start his business if he can kill the most pythons, because this is Florida and the government's paying out for pythons.
What a weird premise for a show.
Yes, it's really interesting. I don't know where else it's playing, but it's on the Peacock
I will
app.
look for that.
But I mean, it's so funny because he gets involved with the weirdest people, of course. I mean, they're Florida man, right? He's normal. He's a normal guy. But nobody else is. And the one, I think her name is Jillian or something like that, is the Uber driver who he ends up getting sucked into this whole thing with. And she's just so goofy. Like, she's just trying to make money and live. And so she drives an Uber, but behind the Uber, she is pulling this huge billboard thing. And she lives in the billboard.
Oh.
But she's getting paid to advertise the billboard then. So she's got this little mattress and all of her belongings in the back. Yes, she's adorable. And she's, oh no, what is she? Australian or something. At one point, she takes a job as like a task rabbit job or something.
Oh, God.
And the person's like, can you do an American accent? And her American accents, she's just like, she like yells when she's doing it. She's all, I would like a steak! And then she keeps trying to do it. And she's like, wait. I have a password or something like that into it. And I thought that was so funny because that's when I was little and learning how to do accents. Mm-hmm. And I used to be able to do accents great. Now that it's died, that part of my brain died or something. But I would always have a passphrase or something.
Yep. And
if I did the passphrase, then I could go into the accent and do it from there, right? And so that was how I learned those. And so I was like, oh my God, it has a name. But that one, we're not done with that one yet. But they had a early screening or something of it, so I do think it's playing somewhere else. But the early screening was on Peacock, and then all of a sudden the entire season was there. I think.
Now, did you see the ads for Outer Range?
No.
It's on Amazon Prime. I am so proud of myself because I looked up where it is, because I'm always like, it's on a streaming service, but I don't know which one. This one is on Amazon Prime. It's got Josh Brolin, and he's a rancher, and it's very dark. There's no joy on this ranch.
Okay.
So he lives with his wife and his two sons. The one son is like a rodeo rider, and the other son, and of course they're working the ranch, and the other son has a daughter, and his wife has gone missing. Mm-hmm. And that's all you know. Anyway, Josh Brolin is out riding the range on his horse, and he comes across this hole in the range. It's kind of a hole
on the range.
It kind of looks like a black hole.
Okay.
I mean, there's kind of like you can see, you know how in the sunlight you can see dust particles?
Yeah.
It looks like that. There's like dust particles floating in it, but it's black. It's dark. And he's like, he kind of looks at it and goes, huh, what the fuck is this? And of course he throws things in it, and he doesn't know what it is. And all of a sudden this girl shows up and wants to know if she can camp in his pasture. And for some reason he says yes. They're all looking at him like, you don't even like people. And his wife is real religious. And so only the first 2 episodes are out. As I speak, by the time this comes out, more will be out. It's dark, but it's intriguing.
Where is it?
Amazon Prime.
Okay. Is that the son or the dad?
The son.
Okay.
It's the son. So, yeah, it's like, it's like, what is this whole, and it starts out with this, do you know Kronos, the god of time? And then there's another reference to Kronos, and I'm like, well, it's weird enough, it's keeping me interested.
Okay, I'll check that out. Do you enjoy going to the grocery store? If so, this message is not for you. But if you're like me and procrastinate going to the store, Instacart is a fantastic option to ensure you no longer have to. Save yourself a trip and go through Instacart, where you can get a delivery through a personal shopper in as little as 1 hour. My experiences have been great so far, with my personal shopper texting me before substituting another product, letting me know when they were on their way to my house, and letting me know it had been delivered, all via text. If you click on our affiliate link in the show notes or on our website, you get free delivery on your first order over $35, and you help out our show at the same time. It's the perfect time to give it a try. Well, then we might as well start, and I guess I'll go first.
Oh, yeah, you start this. What are you going to talk about?
I'm talking about killer nurses. You know, there's a plethora of those to choose from, but I chose one that was pretty recent, and then somebody else who was also in Texas. So it's killer Texas nurses, really.
All right.
There was even a third one mentioned in conjunction with them, but it seemed like that case was still ongoing, so I did not do it, and it involved children.
Oh.
So, my sources. A People article by Steve Helling, CBS News, Tyler Morning Telegraph, article by Zach Wellerman, Yahoo News by Kenneth Niemeyer and Kelsey Vlamis, New York Times article, Murderpedia, Oxygen article by Benjamin H. Smith. Okay. In 2017 and 2018, several ICU patients at Christus Trinity Mother Frances Lewis and Peaches Owen Hart Hospital, Jesus Christ, in Tyler, Texas.
That's a lot of names for a hospital.
It's so many words. In Tyler, Texas, started having what appeared to be strokes while recovering from cardiac surgery. These strokes caused permanent neurological damage in most of the patients, but 4 of them died. While this happening in a couple instances might not have caught anyone's eye, it is an ICU after all. Cardiac surgery is typically very serious. And this was spread out over a little over a year. The numbers were too high, so the hospital launched an investigation. Between staff records showing who was on shift when the patient's conditions worsened, always very suddenly, they were all in good shape after their surgeries. They were all awake and cognizant and passing all the tests and stuff for the record. So this isn't while they were still unconscious, this happened.
Right.
It always happened on the night shift, and surveillance footage was used also from the moments before the strokes. The eyes of administration focused on a William George Davis. He was a 34-year-old ICU registered nurse. He'd been working at the hospital for 5 years by this time, and he was very well liked by medical staff and patients. No problems with him. He'd had a previous hospital job before. No problems reported there. On February 15th, 2018, he was fired. His license was suspended in March, and he was arrested in April of that same year. In October 2021, he was convicted for 4 counts of murder for the 4 victims known to have been attributed to him. Now, for the record, in both these cases, it was really hard to find information on the people. So, luckily with this group, I was able to find, like, their families gave them actual obituaries that I could take a little information from. The ones in the next story, I really just... getting their ages was all I could do. And with one of them, I couldn't even get that because they had the simplest obituaries ever. It was sad.
Oh.
So anyway, the victims who died were John Lafferty, a 74-year-old retired IRS special agent who had moved to East Texas to become a farmer. Ronald Clark, a 68-year-old who enjoyed gardening and riding his motorcycle. Christopher Greenaway, a 47-year-old pilot and veteran who served in Iraq. And Joseph Kalina, a 58-year-old ex-long-haul trucker who loved fishing and barbecuing. In all, charges were brought against him for 7 patients, at least one of whom was in a fully vegetative state, but still hanging on to life at the time of the trial. The prosecution felt he was responsible for even more deaths and patients who were harmed, but there was nothing they could really do to prove that. Phone calls from prison to his wife and brother were introduced as evidence. In these recordings, he admitted to having injected air into their IV lines, but he stated that he was only trying to extend his work hours by making the patients briefly sicker so they'd have to remain in the ICU longer. Bullshit. A nurse knows that's not how that's going to work.
Yeah.
He said their deaths were accidental, as was the neurological damage he caused via air embolisms. He also mentioned having caused the death of a 96-year-old female patient in 2016, even though he'd stated on a different phone call that he'd never thought about harming his patients before June 2017, when the cases started racking up. So I think there's a lot more to this story than anybody knows so far. He also cried once, like sounding hysterical, like hysterical sobbing to his wife, and then abruptly stopped and just said, "Well, I've prayed to God about it." He repeatedly told his wife that he'd repented to God and asked God for forgiveness, acting like it meant his actions were forgiven. Like, truly, there's quotes, and it's just, like, it doesn't matter anymore, because I repented. He also stated that as a nurse, he'd become numb and detached when it came to patients, so he didn't feel any guilt. And that was in response, his wife was like, "Well, don't you feel any guilt whatsoever about what you've done?" And he was like, "Well, I'm hardened to it, so no, I don't feel any guilt." He did state that he had nothing to do with Kalina's death. It took Kalina 2 years to die after the air bubbles were found in his brain. Like, there were already charges and all of that pending. And so he was under one of the assault with a deadly weapon type charges. And then he died. During the time that he was alive for those 2 years, he was unable to speak, walk, or in any way care for himself during that time. They had to feed him. He ultimately died in 2020. Notably, his now ex-wife, just for the record, was indignant and disgusted on the phone calls. And I just want to put that out there. And I didn't put her name in here. But she told him he was evil and that he needed to apologize to the families while on the stand. Like, she really she was like, "You owe those families apologies." I don't believe he did so. She also said if he was concerned they couldn't afford house payments, because that was one of his excuses. "Well, I was trying to get extra hours because, the house payments were overwhelming." She was like, "Then we shouldn't have bought the house. If it was going to be a problem, if we couldn't afford it, we shouldn't have bought the house then." Also, for the record, though, coworkers have stated that the hospital was short-staffed, as they always are, and that overtime availability was abundant. So the whole excuse is bullshit. And we all know the excuse is bullshit. In the opinion of at least one coworker, it had nothing to do with money and everything to do with him being a sadistic murderer. And clearly that's true. And the thing is, with that case, with him mentioning, "I think I was responsible for a woman's death in 2016. I mean, surely other people have died in that ICU, and he's not taking responsibility for that. I feel like he was probably trying some different things in the past, and so it's harder to catch. And there might have been other problems that they don't know about, or that they didn't attribute to him, and might have just been like, well, this could have happened. Whereas in these cases, with these 4 men, the 7 total that there were charges for, they were doing so well after surgery, and their surgeons had visited them, and the surgeons were raising a ruckus. They were like, something is happening in this ICU.
And I mean, it can happen that somebody comes through successfully and then...
Absolutely. But it's rare.
And not this often.
And these, just to be clear, these people, the additional people who are on here who didn't die, they're vegetables. So it's not just there's something a little bit wrong. He destroyed these people. Though the prosecution defended him by saying he was simply a scapegoat for accidental deaths at the hospital, he was sentenced to death, because these were capital murder charges. All of the patients had been in good shape and functioning, like I've said, and then there was a very sudden downturn, and there was video footage of him standing by and watching as others tried to bring the patients back and refusing to get involved. One of his fellow nurses who came on the stand, she responded to the emergency alarm, which again, he would just stand there. He wouldn't run in there when the alarm went off. It's what you do.
Yeah.
She said when she got in there was a syringe in the IV tube. And Davis, I think he noticed it. So he walks in and he's like, and he was her superior. And he said, "Remove that syringe and cap it and set that off to the side. And then let's take care of the issue." So she did it, she didn't think anything of it.
Right.
Until, of course, more things started coming to light. And she was like, "Oh my God, he left the syringe in there in that case."
That's wanting to be caught.
Yes. And again, the video was catching him going in and then the alarms going off as he, after he walked out. So everything really led to it being him, even though he's still... I mean, here's the thing. He said not guilty, and they're defending him and saying it had nothing to do with him. And yet, I just went to a talk by a prison guard, right? And she said, not only do they all know, are they all told that every call they make from the prison is being recorded. There's signs on the wall that say it, and you get a recording or something on the phone first that says it's being recorded. And yet he's having these conversations with his wife and his brother. And in one conversation with his brother, because a capital murder in Texas means you either get life or you get death. There's not a smaller charge for capital murder. And so he's talking to his brother and he's like, well, I'd rather wait until it's God's time. And he's laughing about it. Like, none of this is funny,
what
dude.
A psycho.
Yeah. So the jury took only about an hour to deliberate and find him guilty. And there will be an automatic appeal that hasn't occurred yet because it is a death sentence. So there's automatic appeals that happen. There have been no similar incidents at the hospital since Davis was removed. And again, that was 2018.
Wow.
So now we're going to move on to Kimberly Sines. And she was also in Texas, but in Lufkin, Texas. Sines was a 34-year-old LPN working at a dialysis clinic for DaVita, which is a Denver company, by the way. Eerily similar to Davis's situation, there was a sudden spike of patients getting ill during their treatments in spring 2008. Here's the thing. When you go in and do dialysis, it's several hours. It's your blood basically being pulled out, cleaned of your toxins because your kidneys aren't working or whatever, and put back in. So it's many hours, and this is not a fatal thing. This is not something where they have a lot of emergent situations during dialysis.
No.
So just to be clear about that. In 1 month, the calls for an ambulance were double what they'd been the entire previous year. There were 30 calls total in April.
Holy shit.
2 women, Thelma Metcalf and Clara Strange, died as a result of cardiac arrest on the same day, April 1st. And that was not the first time 2 were again victimized on the same day. These issues raised eyebrows in 2 different places. DaVita noticed it, and they sent someone to investigate what was happening, since in general, again, dialysis patients rarely code during a treatment. Now they were suffering cardiac arrest, and one had received too much blood thinner at one point, heparin, so things that had to be modified. At the same time, the paramedics alerted their bosses at the fire department because they knew that it was not okay they were being called here. They were like, this is extremely unusual. And their boss listened and sent it up the line. So that at that point, state health inspectors were alerted. And they step in. So you've got multiple investigations happening. By April 28th, there were inspectors on site. One of them, they said, okay, let's reassign people and see what happens. So they reassigned Sines to do patient care instead of being the one to set up the dialysis machine. So typically it said the way it worked, there was a person who's taking care of them. If they vomited during it, if there was anything like that, they're there to take care of the patient. The other person is there to hook them up, to make sure everything's running okay, to change the flow, that sort of thing.
Okay.
So you kind of have a technical person and a comfort person. So Sines gets told, you're doing patient care, you're not running the machines. So she starts crying. She's upset and she's crying and she says that job is beneath her.
What?
Yes. Yet, while these inspectors were there, 2 more women had to have emergency help called in because their blood pressure had dropped dangerously during the treatment. This time, 2 witnesses who were other patients watched Sines squat on the floor with bleach and a bucket, pour the bleach into the bucket of water, draw it up into syringes, and then she injected it into the victim's lines. So the person who runs the machine had stepped away to deal with another patient.
Right.
She injected bleach into their lines. And so one of the patients calls somebody over and she's like, she's assigned to me and I need to know what she's doing over there. Okay, because she knows. And she said it concerned her for 2 reasons. First of all, bleach being injected into lines while they're running somebody's blood, but also the bucket being set on the floor and stuff. That's not clean. That's not what you do in a hospital. That's not how any of this works.
No.
And if you're sitting there for hours at a time, you've had time to observe how all of this works. You know, some of these people are doing this for years.
Yeah.
So.
Wow.
Sines gets pulled aside and she denies doing anything wrong. Instead, she claims that they'd just seen her cleaning out the lines on an unused machine and gotten confused. Because they do flush the lines to clean them.
Right.
So even had this been true, the method was against policy. Again, a bucket on the floor. But policy dictated that measuring cups must be used to mix the cleaning chemicals. If anybody's been in any job that involves anything like that, you must very carefully measure it. There are proportions that are appropriate. And she was using a syringe. She said, well, I was just using the syringe to make sure it was exactly the right amount. What? Yes, and they said syringes are never used for that purpose or anything around cleaning that line like that. And it certainly wasn't done while a patient is in the middle of several hours of dialysis.
No.
They were able to grab the container and the syringes and test them, and they were positive for bleach. So neither of these women coded at that time, which is good. Her superiors called the police, and she was fired the next day. They also shut the clinic down for 2 weeks to further investigate. They were like, that's it. I'm like, where do you go? Like, you can't not get they must send them to a different hospital. But that's for the best then, so I'm totally behind that. They were able to ascertain that Sines was on shift every single time there was an incident like this. When police obtained her hard drive, they found that she'd searched whether bleach could be fatal and whether it was detectable in dialysis lines. That's very specific.
Insane.
Yes. I will say about the Davis before, he had searched, after a couple of the deaths, he had searched whether police were investigating a serial killer at the hospital. He had specifically done a search on that. Okay. One of her coworkers stated that the victims had all been patients she'd complained about. She didn't like them. They were problematic. They were trouble. They were bitchy, whatever. And that one of the women who coded had done so immediately after Sines dealt with her, then went out for a cigarette break. So Sines did her setup, then she went out, so it wouldn't be suspicious, right? Did her cigarette break. And the same thing as with Davis, when the alarms went off, she hung back. So she didn't go and try to help. It was also found that she had been hired despite having been fired from 4 previous hospital jobs. She had been caught stealing Demerol and trying to cheat on urine tests when they did the drug testing. She was an addict with 2 children. She and her husband had a history of domestic disturbance. About a year before the incidents, he had filed for divorce and a restraining order against her. Some articles said they'd made up by them, but either way, they were not divorced at the time of her crimes. At the close of the investigation, Sines was arrested for 5 counts of capital murder and 5 counts of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Those who had been murdered were Clara Strange, a 77-year-old retired school teacher and avid quilter, whose husband, 2 daughters, and 7 siblings had predeceased her. I just had to throw that in because I'm reading her obituary and I see predeceased by, and I'm like, my God. And it didn't even say how many siblings she had still alive. That was just 7 predeceased her. Thelma Metcalf, a 68-year-old great-grandmother. Garland Kelly, a 58-year-old great-great-grandfather. He had like 32 grandchildren or great-grandchildren, and I don't remember how many great-greats, but I was like, damn. He suffered for several months before dying.
Oh.
Cora Bryant, a 65-year-old great-grandmother, also died several months after the incident. And Opal Few, who I could not find an obituary for at all. And apparently Opal Few was not an uncommon name, but I was going by the date of her death.
Right.
From the, I had read case reports. And I couldn't find anything on her, and that made me sad. I couldn't even find her age because I found other Opal Fews, and one of them was fascinating. I read her a bit, and then I went, wait a second, what do you mean she died in December? And I was like, damn it. So it wasn't her. But anyway, yeah, this is all I could get. Like, their obituaries didn't have a lot. After she was fired and her license suspended, she applied to work as a receptionist at a medical facility, where she was hired because she lied about her work history. So I imagine she probably lied about her work history in those initial hospital jobs. Hope. But then that means they weren't calling whatever she listed. They weren't calling on her references. At a hospital, you should be fucking calling on references every time. I don't care how little time you have.
Yeah.
That's bullshit. It's a hospital. You're putting them in charge of people's lives.
Yeah.
Anyway. Prosecutors ended up having to contact a bioterrorism expert and analytical chemist to try to prove there was bleach in the bloodstream of the patients. It turns out that wasn't something that was testable.
Oh.
Then, you couldn't just be like, yep, there's bleach in here. However, Mark Zukowski, the expert, had developed a way to test for chlorotyrosine, which is an amino acid that forms due to exposure to chlorinated substances.
Okay.
9 of the samples tested positive.
Oh, shit.
It was determined that the bleach was causing hemolysis, where it would cause red blood cells to explode at exposure, which would then release iron, like a lot of iron into the bloodstream, and that would cause cardiac arrest. Sines was found guilty March 31st, 2012 for all 10 counts. Rather than death, she was given multiple concurrent life sentences, because again, this was capital murder, without possibility of parole. Death could have only been applicable had it been shown she would be a future danger, and the jury did not find she would be, even though I don't agree. She also got 3 consecutive 20-year sentences for the aggravated assaults. It was strongly believed by prosecutors that she had previously killed other patients, but there was no way to confirm it, and they had to let it go. She did have 4 other hospital jobs. But you can't, there's nothing to test for the bleach if that was what she was doing previously, because they might change their MO when they find out what works best, right? They were able to confirm she was present at other adverse incidents going back through the term of her employment, which had been 8 months. But again, not being able to test for blood and syringes for the bleach, they couldn't do anything about it and they had to drop it. In addition, the DeVita location had been doing a poor job of documenting adverse occurrences, with less than half of the incidents involving calling an ambulance actually having a written report done. It was something like 105 incidents and 68 had not been reported.
Holy shit. That's a badly run.
It was a crazy, yeah.
Yeah.
Her defense had actually tried to use this to state the patients didn't die because of her, but not documenting an incident doesn't magically inject bleach into their bloodstreams. As far as her motive, she has never said. It's felt it came down to her being unhappy at home and in the workplace, and she took it out on patients she didn't like. Having to be on dialysis is already such an awful thing. You know, it's not fun.
Yeah.
And then to have somebody injecting bleach into your body, even if they were people that didn't know, like nothing truly adverse happened after it, that couldn't have felt good. That had to have been a even less pleasant than usual experience.
I would think it would hurt.
Yeah. So, and my thing is, I'm like, how desperate was she to hurt people that she did it when the inspectors were there and when she was not supposed to be touching the lines?
That's something.
Then she actually sobbed when she thought she wasn't going to be able to pull it off that day. So how often was she injecting bleach and it just wasn't caught? Because it just didn't, maybe it wasn't enough, maybe whatever reason it didn't impact that person the same as it did other people. And she did have, there was a list of people that she had just harmed and had not killed as well. So.
Oh, well, you know, if she didn't kill them.
Yeah, it's totally fine that they're, you know, they're, in addition to their kidneys not functioning, they now have some other issues with their heart or whatever.
The red blood cells exploding.
Yeah.
That does not sound like.
Sounds intense.
It does. It does not sound like a fun time at all.
No. So, yeah, I felt like she was so twisted. Like, I felt like she was even more twisted than Davis, and yet they didn't. And I'm like, did that come down to a jury looking at a woman versus a jury looking at a man?
Possibly.
Was there bias because the whole male nurse thing? Like, I don't know. But to me, she seemed more desperate because of her actions, because of her sobbing when she thought she couldn't do it, and because of her doing it anyway with inspector. If you're smart, you wait.
Yeah.
They won't stay there forever.
What kind of impulse is driving her that she can't even wait till later in the day or till her next shift or till next week?
Like, just one day, don't harm some people.
Not like I wanted her to wait and get away with it, but yeah, what kind of...
It's just so driven, and it's crazy to me. And I'm like, to me, she's the one who would definitely do more harm. I feel she'd been doing it for longer than he had, and possibly at these other hospitals, which unless you get some investigative reporter who gives a shit, right? Nobody's ever going to know, and nobody will ever be able to prove it because they don't have blood samples to test. So they were just lucky that they still had stuff from these other women that things had happened to.
And can you imagine sitting there getting your dialysis and going, what the fuck? Is she injecting fucking bleach?
Right? What's happening?
And you're like questioning yourself. You're like, I didn't just see what I think I just saw.
Right. But again, you have to, and what if you're new? You don't know what's normal and what's not normal. So yeah, it's just amazing that because the nurses are always, each one has multiple patients.
Yes.
One person can just do something like that and not have anybody notice.
Wow.
Scary.
That is very scary. Holy shit. All right. So we're going to switch topics now. So, before I tell you my sources, I have a question. That's why I didn't want to tell you what I was doing for the second one, because I wanted to ask you the question first. What, if anything, do you remember about the Scarsdale diet?
Oh, I don't think I might know once you say it, but it doesn't.
Okay. So I'm going to be talking about Jean Harris. Mm-hmm. And my sources are Wikipedia, no kidding, Healthline, the Scarsdale diet, Dr. Murder, which was a documentary, which I highly recommend. I will put up the link for that because it was fascinating. Her obituary in the New York Times, WebMD, and withdrawal.net.
Oh.
Well, I don't take anybody's word for anything. If they say, this drug is this, I'm like, is it?
I'm going to look it up.
I'm going to look it up. So, Dr. Herman Tarnower was a cardiologist in Scarsdale, New York in the 60s and 70s. The reason it got named the Scarsdale diet, this is the richest town on the East Coast in 2019 and 2020. So it's part of Westchester County, right outside of New York City. The average household income is $452,000. So it's always been sort of this upper crust, exclusive, beautiful, I mean, it really is beautiful, place to live. And he was there treating his cardiology patients. They have great schools. Anyway, you get it. So this whole thing began the diet began as a 2-page flyer that Tarnower handed out to his cardio patients to help them lose weight. So his patients, you have to understand, he was practicing in an extremely affluent area. So he was getting invited to dinner parties. He was getting invited to go on ski trips, expensive vacations. So after he started getting positive feedback on this diet and collecting these success stories, one of his patients was in publishing, was like, you need to write a diet book. So in 1979, he published The Complete Scarsdale Diet plus Dr. Tarnower's Lifetime Keep Slim program. And he published it with Sam Sinclair Baker. Okay, that was a rabbit hole I went down, and I had to delete it all because it got too long. But look up Sam Baker because he's fascinating.
Okay.
So, in a nutshell, no, the diet is not extremely important to the story, but I love defaming a bad diet. I really do.
There were so many.
Basically, it restricted people to a high-protein diet of 1,000 calories a day. It didn't matter if you were man or woman, how old you were, how active you were.
Yeah, you'll lose weight because your muscles
you're
digested.
starving. So everybody got 1,000 calories a day. No alcohol, no starchy vegetables. And when he first wrote this, the only fruit you were allowed was grapefruit.
Oh, yes.
So, yeah.
Okay.
No snacks. So what you were supposed to do is stay on this diet for 2 weeks, then switch to the Keep Slim program.
Was this ever called the grapefruit diet, or is that a different diet?
I think that was a ripoff of this.
Oh, okay.
So the book was initially crazy popular, and I remember seeing it. Because I'll post the cover of the book, and you'll immediately go, oh yeah. Even if you didn't pick it up and read, I never did, but I still recognized it when I saw it. It was eventually heavily criticized as being extremely unhealthy. No shocker. So Dr. Tarnower got rich advising rich people to lose weight in an unsafe and unsustainable way. So what happened to him?
Survival of the fittest.
So let's talk about Jean. Jean Struven was born in 1923 in Chicago. She was a very intelligent and very driven woman. She attended Smith College. She graduated magna cum laude with a degree in economics. She married Jim Harris. She became a teacher. She stopped teaching, had 2 sons, returned to teaching. And in 1965, they were divorced. So Jean Harris crossed paths with Tarnower in 1966 at a dinner party. This was the very big social circuit. It was love at first sight, or at least lust, because he took her dancing, he sent her flowers, he was really wooing her. And after 2 months, he proposed with a 4-carat diamond ring. That is not a small ring. So she accepted, but after a 14-month engagement, he said he couldn't do it. He just couldn't commit to getting married. So Jean said it didn't matter if they were married as long as they could be together. So she hosted his dinner parties. She traveled with him, spent weekends at his home. She had her own bathroom. It wasn't like she had a drawer. She had, it was funny because there are pictures of the bedroom and it's just like the Dick Van Dyke Show. There are 2 beds.
Oh, wow.
She had her own bed. She had her nightstand. She had her own bathroom. In 1970 or thereabouts, Jean complained about constantly feeling tired. So Tarnower prescribed Desoxin, which perked her right up. You ever heard of Desoxyn?
No.
WebMD says the generic name for the drug is methamphetamine.
Oh!
Yeah, I went, what? So today, it is listed as a treatment for ADHD.
What?
And not much else.
Methamphetamine for ADHD,
Yeah.
huh?
Yeah, it was
I feel like I'm missing out if it
but-
gave her energy.
But it's not really used much anymore, but that was the last thing it was listed that it was used for. As a quick aside, if you ever want to horrify yourself with some absolute nightmare stories, research meth or amphetamine development and use through Big Pharma. It started out as a nasal spray. It was meth in a nasal spray for allergies.
Oh!
The whole, yeah, Big Pharma. Anyway, that was another rabbit hole I couldn't. So in 1977, Jean was made headmistress of the Madeira School in Virginia, which is a very prestigious all-girls school. And her coworkers liked her, but they never felt like they got very close to her, like they never developed a real friendship with her. And she continued to drive 5 hours each way to spend her weekends with Turnauer. Despite the fact that she was getting, as you can well imagine, a headmistress of this school has a lot of job responsibilities.
Yeah, but she's on meth. She's got energy.
That's true. She has business trips. She's trying to do fundraising. She's, when she contemplated buying a house in Virginia, he told her there was no need because you always have a home with me.
Okay.
Yeah. So at some point in the 70s, Turnauer hired Lynn Triforos, who was 30 years his junior, as his receptionist and assistant. And before long, she too was going on vacations with him, hosting dinner parties, doing the horizontal bop. Jean appeared to be aware of Lynn's place in Turnauer's life and didn't like it. Apparently, he would just fuck anybody and everybody. He was always bringing women back to his house because he had a housekeeping couple. The wife was the housekeeper and the husband was like the handyman, groundskeeper kind of guy. Well, the housekeeper kept a log and wrote down every time who he brought home and how often. And I was like, lady, you needed a hobby.
That was her hobby.
She needed a different hobby. So anyway, he's catting around and he's got Jean on the hook, but won't commit. She's putting up with it. So when his wealthy patients encouraged him to write the book, we're back to the Scarsdale diet, he was extremely unhappy with the way the first draft came out, and he asked Jean for help. And it is documented. She worked, I don't know if it was over the summer or over a break, she worked nonstop for 2 weeks, working all day, every day, editing the manuscript. Even then, while he was taking Trifornos out to dinner, taking her out dancing, he later did, apparently the book had more than one dedication, so the first dedication is to Jean, and he later paid her $2,000 for her help, which insulted her, because this was all, she was doing this because she loved him.
My sympathy only goes so far when you know he's doing this stuff and clearly doesn't love you back.
Yes. At some point, hereabouts, Jean was getting to the end of her prescription and asked the school physician, can you write me a refill for Desoxyn? And he was like, fuck no. He said, that is a dangerous, mind-altering drug, and I will not do that. So she immediately calls Turnauer, and he basically tells her, it's harmless in the dose that you are taking. This guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Here, I'll refill it for you. On March 6th of 1980, Jean ran out of Desoxyn. She repeatedly called Turnauer for a refill, but he was blowing her off. He was not returning her calls. He was not calling in the script. He was just he just was ignoring her. And this is where the withdrawal.net comes in. According to withdrawal.net, Desoxyn withdrawal has a host of really horrible symptoms, up to and including anxiety and irritability, depression, delusional thinking with paranoia, and intense depression.
Okay.
So, At the same time at the same time as she's going through withdrawal, she had to expel 4 seniors from the school she's in because they'd been caught they'd either been caught with marijuana or marijuana paraphernalia in their rooms. So this was 1980. It was not as big a deal as it would have been 10 years earlier, but it was also not a nonchalant thing like it would probably be today. So a large portion of the student body was staging a sit-in to protest the expulsions. Jean Harris couldn't take it anymore and decided to kill herself. So she wrote her will and had it notarized, like at the school. Like she went out, can you notarize my will for me? She wrote a letter to the school board resigning, and she wrote other suicide notes in her office at the school. Over the course of these 3 days, she wrote a letter to Tarnower expressing her feelings, and she pretty much included everything.
Good.
Rage, sorrow, depression, anger, jealousy, self-hatred, fear, and her hatred of Lynn Triforos. She puts the letter in the mail, and on Monday, March 10th, she gets in the car and drives to Tarnower's home, 5 hours away, with a loaded gun in her pocket, in her coat pocket. She also had extra bullets, like loose, in her coat pocket. What was really interesting in the documentary, she said she wanted to see him one last time before she killed herself. She also said, I would have been better off if I'd just stayed in Virginia and killed myself there, but I didn't do it. I wanted to see him one last time. Also of note, because there was so much that I couldn't put in, but also I really wanted to stress one thing that struck me in this documentary. She's always defending him. She talks about his childhood, and he did come from a hard beginning and really built himself up.
Good for him. And then he felt he could treat people like shit. Gotcha.
Yes. But she was always like, well, they had some big party. And after people went home, he said, isn't it, I know all these people now that want me to, I'm trying to think of how he said it. All these people who want to talk to me, but none of these people want to listen to me. Mm-hmm. So they all wanted him there, but they didn't really want to ask his opinion on things.
Okay.
That's
very hard.
I'm like, tough fucking shit.
That's every adult ever.
Yeah. So she gets there, and he seemed really indifferent to her. And apparently this was not, you never knew when she got there if he was going to be like, Jean, so good to see you, or what the fuck do you want? Mm-hmm. So he was very cold, he was very indifferent, and he refused to talk to her. So she went in to the bathroom, her bathroom, and found another woman's nightgown and perfume, and just lost her shit. So according to Jean Harris, she put the gun against her head, but before she could pull the trigger, Tarnower grabbed the gun. He was behind her, and he put his hand over the gun and pulled it down as she was pulling the trigger. So he got shot through the palm of his hand. Mm-hmm. He took the gun away. He had the gun away from her, so he set it on the bed, and he picks up the phone to call the housekeeper. I don't know why, to clean up I'm like, maybe an ambulance? But he was trying to call the housekeeper. So Jean picks up the gun again, points it at her head again, and he wrestles her for control of the gun. As they're wrestling, she thought apparently his thumb was pressing into her abdomen, mm-hmm. and she thought it was the gun. The gun is between them. Mm-hmm. And she pulls the trigger twice and shoots him again. Like, just fucking have at it. One of those was a fatal shot because of a vein or the artery it nicked. I can't remember. That was a very tiny piece of all the information. But that was the shot. That was what would eventually kill him.
Okay.
When he fell to the floor, she tried to shoot herself, but the hammer fell on an empty chamber. So she puts the gun against her head, pulls the trigger, and nothing. It just clicks. So she pulls the gun away and shoots again, mm-hmm. and fires and shoots the dresser.
Okay.
Puts the gun back against her head and pulls the trigger 4 more times. That's one thing that was really consistent. It was click, 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 click.
Okay.
She pulled it 4 times. But of course, it's spent now, and she can't, there are no bullets in there. The casings are still in there because she really doesn't know how to use a gun. The casings are still in there, and the forensic expert said from the trajectory of the bullets, her story is true. He said the casings that were still in the gun showed signs of having the hammer strike them more than once.
Okay.
So she did try to fire on the empty cylinders. And that was what happened at the trial, was they kept saying, is it possible to shoot somebody that many times by mistake? And it was so funny. Their forensic expert was like, well, it's wacky, but it's true. Yes, you can. So her defense team, is like, yes, this was an accident. She was trying to kill herself, which of course having written several suicide notes kind of lends weight to that was what she wanted to do. But because of his infamy, this book was hot shit for a while. Mm-hmm. And her position at this prestigious school, I mean, these were the upper crust people. The trial was front and center in the media for about a year. One thing to note, when she was first taken into custody, they gave her a psych eval, mm-hmm. which is pretty standard. The evaluation determined that she was clinically depressed, but she refused to take antidepressants and would only continue to take the Desoxyn that Tarnower had prescribed. She didn't trust them. He had her best interests at heart. She would take that drug and no other.
But he sure didn't, so...
No. And I don't think he was trying to harm her when he gave her this originally.
They usually aren't.
But I'm like, even then, it was only supposed to be used for a short period of time, not 10 plus years.
The thing with him being cold and ignoring her and stuff like that, I mean, I'm sorry, it really sounds like she was actually kind of obsessed with him. Mm-hmm. It sounds almost stalkery. Like, it sounds like he didn't feel he was even in a relationship with her after a while, but he was like, all right, we're friends. You can live here or whatever, and I'm going to bang everybody and their sister. So, but like, I don't know.
It's bizarre. So she was very intelligent and very independent. And she was penalized for acting that way during her trial. She wore what were called headmistress outfits. So she wore her nice tailored...
Heaven forbid they not make fun of how a woman's dressed in any given situation.
Yeah, because that's the only thing that's important.
Yeah.
She was wearing a tailored suit and pearls. Oh, heaven forfend.
So are all of you in the audience. Get over it.
Yeah, look at the lawyers. What are they wearing? Oh gosh, suits. Apparently she sneered at witnesses and disagreed with what they said, although it was never quite loud enough for the judge to hold her in contempt. She actively ignored her lawyer's advice on pretty much fucking everything. Everything he told her to do, she wouldn't do. Everything he told her not to do, she did. He advised her not to testify, and she insisted. She was on the stand for 8 full days.
Wow.
That's a long time. That letter that she wrote, it's called the Scarsdale letter, got read into evidence. Her lawyer was convinced if she didn't testify, they could keep that letter out.
Okay.
But she insisted on testifying, and the letter got read into evidence. And I mean, it said horrible things about Trefornos, and it just... I don't know how they could read that letter and not go, this woman is fucking bananas. I mean...
She clearly was bananas. But.
So, in the documentary, the trial judge, Russell Leggett... Let me repeat that name because I would like everyone to know it. Russell Leggett said, this direct quote, "It would have been better if she kept her mouth shut and looked more demure and more wilting, as opposed to being intellectually aggressive on everything that was happening." So if she had
hello, misogyny. How many women have had that said about them?
So if she had sat down and shut up and been a good little, meek little... She didn't help herself.
No.
But you can't blame a person for being who they are. But the fact that the judge said if she had pretended to be something she wouldn't have, she might have gotten away with it. So her lawyer said... because her lawyer was in the documentary too. In his office, after she got the guilty verdict, before she went to be sentenced, she cried. She was emotional. She showed remorse. But on the witness stand, she was very cold and in control and emotionless.
Yes, and we've seen that if you do that, then you can't possibly.
Yep. Because she was really the only thing she had at that point that she could control was her feelings. And she didn't feel, I'm projecting, she didn't feel the need to share those. And so she did not. She also refused to allow psych testimony because if the defense presented the psych evaluation that she had, then the defense could have her questioned by their psych experts and have that testimony. And she refused to be examined again.
Okay.
She just couldn't, that was one take over the line. She couldn't face that. So yeah, so that would have allowed her to, if she had allowed the psych testimony, the psych evals, she could have, I didn't write it down. There is a phrase, a legal phrase. Basically, it's you're under duress. You're under emotional duress. That's not what the phrase is. But in New York State, even though they might find you guilty, it will mitigate your punishment.
Okay.
Thank you. Your sentencing. So she was convicted of second-degree murder and went to prison. Now, she was not, much like Pamela Smart, while she was in prison, she tutored inmates. She helped them get their GEDs and get additional education. She taught parenting classes, and she developed a program that allowed infants born to incarcerated women to spend their first year close to their mothers. She wrote 3 books, donating the proceeds to scholarship programs for the children of the incarcerated mothers. She was released in 1993. She was granted clemency by Governor Mario Cuomo the same day that she was having heart surgery. They called her at the hospital to say she'd been granted clemency. She was living in an assisted living facility when she died in 2012 at the age of 89.
Okay. I feel like you and I maybe feel differently about her because I really think a lot of what she said was problematic, and I really think that she had a mental issue in that in some ways, as awful as he may have treated her, he was also a victim of her and ultimately killed by her when he tried to stop her from killing herself. Let's not forget that. Because, so, yay, she got to say what she wanted in a documentary. He was dead and didn't get to say what their relationship was.
That's true.
So, she really sounded like a person who was obsessed to me. Almost, if he hadn't been allowing her to still live there or whatever, like in a stalkery fashion. Like, here she comes again, showing up for 5 hours away for another weekend here. And, okay, well, we're friends. I'm going to be nice about it. I mean, there's a lot of ways that could be. And all anybody is going to get is her version of that.
Oh, yeah,
because she got to say everything she wanted to say. She got to have a documentary. And in the meantime, there's a dead dude who never got to say what was happening in their relationship.
She does take responsibility for his death. She says she didn't intend to kill him.
Yes, but she doesn't take responsibility for anything that came before that.
No.
If you choose to stay with somebody like that, who has, I think, made it very clear that they're not interested in you in that way, even if he was fucking her occasionally, he was doing it with all these other women and she knew it.
That's true.
So she made a choice to be in that kind of a relationship. I don't know. There's just something that very much bothers me about her and her take on things when I don't think that they're necessarily fully accurate. And I will tell you that if I were a man and I had been anywhere near her after that, I certainly would not have gotten involved with her at risk of having her become obsessed with me.
And I think there is a tendency to say she's a product of her generation, and women of a certain age tend to accept what the men in their life give them. However, she was smart. She was educated.
She was a highly functioning woman that could have done a lot of other things.
And she was divorced. So it wasn't like she didn't know how to get out of it wasn't that she didn't know how to get out of a situation. I agree the drugs probably addled her mind, but, and I don't know that, I know I sound very sympathetic toward her, and in some
In
respects,
some
I
ways,
am.
she deserves sympathy. In other ways, I just feel that it's not the whole story.
That's very true. And there's not a lot out there about him. He was not, by the way, a very handsome man. But apparently he was, he liked to travel.
Yeah.
He liked to host parties. And he always had a pretty woman, because she was an attractive woman, but he always had an attractive woman on his arm hosting the parties with him. It wasn't always her. And yes, she did know that.
Yeah.
And she also knew. So here was the thing. They kept making the statement they traveled to exotic locales.
They're like, well, Key West.
They were visiting Robert the Doll. But in this whole time, whenever they arrived at a hotel, there would be a message waiting for him from Trifornos.
Really?
Yeah, she would send him little cards and letters, so they'd be waiting there when he got there.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, oh, and she said
He must have had some charisma that did not show through, or they were all after his money.
I will say that it crossed my mind they could have been after his money. Who knows? Maybe
or he was actually a really great guy, because if you're so cutesy that you're going to send him notes ahead when he goes on a trip,
maybe he was the bomb.com in bed.
Oh.
Nobody said that, but you know what?
But they didn't say he wasn't. And they were all willing to do this, knowing full well whatever. So,
I can't believe anybody thought, because it does not appear that it was secretive. It was, if she was on a business trip, he was out with someone else. It doesn't sound like he was trying to hide that from her, ever. It doesn't sound like, at the same time, the other women knew about her.
Mm-hmm.
And I get she probably thought she had some kind of
edge
or priority because they were engaged at one time.
Mm-hmm.
But he said to her, I can't do it. I can't make that commitment.
Right.
So, I wonder what happened to the ring. Did she give it back?
I was wondering that early on when you said he broke up the thing. I was like, did she get to keep her 4 carats?
I know, because that's a big-ass diamond. I'm like, where is that ring?
Probably. Or else she would have written in the letter mad about that.
I did not look it up. I should look up the letter and read it. I just thought it sounded too sad. Here's this woman, and she is crazy and hurt and angry and entitled. I don't want to make it all sound like, it sounds like there's so much pain in this letter that I was like, do I really need to?
No, not necessarily. Who wants to read something? This sadness from the depth of somebody's soul.
Yeah.
So,
it's remember
definitely a twisty story.
I remember it being in the news because it happened in 1980. So, and it was, everybody's talking about the Scarsdale diet. To me, the two are intrinsically linked. Jean Harris, the murder, and the Scarsdale diet. They don't have anything to do with each other. I mean, that was his claim to fame, but she was with him well before that.
Uh-huh.
So, but it's just the fact that he was famous for being the Scarsdale diet doctor.
For being another doctor that put out a crappy diet that was going to destroy people's insides.
So, quick aside, just because I looked it up, the guy who wrote the book with him was part of the...
Was that Sam Baker?
Yes. Miracle Grow. No. What the hell was the name of the... True Green is the name of the company who invented Miracle Grow.
Yeah.
He was one of the initial founders of True Green. And he wrote gardening books. Apparently, in the 60s and 70s, he was your go-to guy if you needed somebody to co-write a crappy diet book. But before that, sometime in between the gardening books and the diet books, he wrote pulp mysteries. With those crazy little paperbacks with the lurid covers. He wrote those for a while. He just sounded like, fuck, I'll just pitch her and talk about him. He didn't kill anybody.
Yeah.
So this was mayhem and monstrous.
Yeah. Although not intentionally monstrous, she was just clearly to me a damaged woman. Like,
Yes.
the depression and all of that. That can get very ugly, and then being put on a drug that he may have thought was fine at the time, but we know is problematic.
Yeah.
And then being in a situation as ugly as that one really was emotionally. That's a lot.
And she was on those drugs for over 10 years.
Ugh. Yeah.
And then he just...
In the 80s, they just loved to put people on things.
Oh,
and just,
well...
Your problems, I mean, they still do, but problems suck because for me, obviously in the 80s, being little in elementary school, like the after school specials, the mom was always on Valium.
Yep.
That was the big drug that everybody was on, that they were put besides cocaine. But that was a party drug. So, but it always in after school specials, mom's asleep and they come home from school. I just remember so many that were like that. They got mom's passed out on the sofa again because she's taking her Valium.
But moms were taking, not just moms. We're not just picking on moms. People were also taking speed because people were taking all kinds of diet pills then that were just essentially speed. So a mom was either asleep because she took her Valium, or she was, hanging from the ceiling,
cleaning the entire house for the
shining
50th time
chandelier. Because,
or if your mom's bipolar, by the way, it was pretty similar to that. Cleaning the whole house again. Okay,
it's like
we had a really clean house all the time. Mine is never clean like that.
No, mine isn't either.
Sadly, I have some deep lows, but none of those deep highs. Manic highs.
I don't have any of the manic.
No.
I act more like the Valium mom. She's laying on the couch reading a book.
I think she's sad. Low energy. Oh, wow.
Low energy could be my middle name these days.
I just think it's fine. I'm thinking I have heard of the Scarsdale diet vaguely, but his book came out when I was like 3.
Yeah.
So, but I definitely remember the grapefruit bullshit. The first big diet that came out, and it would be Atkins and Long Beach were like the two that were coming out when I was coming into adulthood, saying it had an impact at all,
Right.
Long Beach, and it was like they were selling just like this juice diet.
I don't remember that. Oh, and Jenny Craig and Slim Fast.
Slim Fast, yeah. My mom had Slim Fast. I did Slim Fast for a while.
What was the diet pill everybody took?
Oh, yeah. Is it the one with like a Chinese name or something?
No, not that
like
one.
An herb.
No, it was over the counter. It was somebody out there listening.
Dexatrim.
Going, yes, I was going to say somebody out there listening is going, oh my God, it's blah blah blah.
There's so many though.
But yeah, Dexatrim and all that stuff is all speed.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for listening.
Yes, we will talk. We will talk at you all next week. Have a good week. Don't try the Scarsdale diet.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
Find us on Facebook and Instagram or at our website, mysteriesmonstersmayhem.com.
Please like, rate, and review, follow, and share wherever your favorite podcasts are downloaded.
Thank you for listening and supporting our podcast. We'll be back next week with more shenanigans.